welcome to Rob from the Internet Talks About Beer. Sure, we discuss different styles of beer, beer history, beer flavor profiles. We give shout outs to breweries we think make exceptional beer, and we talk about whatever else comes to mind during the course of the conversation. As always, I'm Rob from the Internet. Let's talk about beer. All right, so joining me today is a friend who I have been friends with on Twitter and met one time in real life. For almost a decade we've been friends, and this is like I guess this is the second time we've actually been able to have an actual conversation face to face, even though it's electronic face to face.
Yeah,
So yeah, joining me today is my buddy Ryan Geyer. Ryan, if you would tell me a little bit about yourself, how it is you got into craft beer, and what you do when you're not drinking craft beer or talking about craft beer.
yeah, sure thing. So first of all, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to doing this for a little while. When you call out for folks to show up on the show, I've been anxious to get here. So thanks for having me. Um, Craft beer. Like I grew up in California, and so right around the time that craft beer started really kind of becoming a popular thing was probably when it really showed up on my radar. I'd have a hard time pinpointing when exactly that is. The thing that really like sticks out for me is when I first got married. My wife went through a culinary program, and she learned not everything, but many things about how to taste wine and sort of how flavor profiles work and that sort of thing. I remember the first time that she convinced me to drink a wine because I was a beer drinker then. She convinced me to drink a wine, and she brought out this book that no kidding is like 2.5 3 inches thick, and it's like big pages, and opened it up to like the flavor profiles and the colors and sort of like how you evaluate a wine. Um, and so being a beer drinker, I started to kind of apply that to okay when I'm drinking beers as well, and that was sort of what elevated me from like buying stuff from the liquor store and buying lagers and things like that to like actually paying attention to what a beer tastes like and how it's made and things like that.
Cool. So you're beer drinker. You've been drinking craft beer for many years. What do you do when you're not drinking craft beer or talking to people like me about craft beer?
uh, all sorts of things. So I'm a father of four, so that takes up a lot of my
Sucker.
time. Yeah, you're not lying. That takes up a lot of my time. Besides that, I work as a software engineer, and I like to do computery stuff on off hours. So write my own software and do my own kind of things. I work on cars. I've got a project car in the garage behind me. Kind of into a lot of techie engineering type of things.
Awesome. I can hear the munchkins running around in the background there. I
Yes.
mean, when there's four of them, it's probably never quiet at your house.
No, there's never a dull moment.
All right, everybody, we are going to be talking about a much favored subject on this show. We're talking about stouts today. So, for those who aren't familiar, stout, the term stout was first coined in 1677. And it was originally meant to describe a strength of beer, not necessarily a style of beer. So, back before porters were invented in 1760ish, um, you could order a stout anything. It was just a stout ale or a stout, whatever. It just meant that it was stronger, and typically it was something that was above 7% alcohol. It wasn't until the 1700s when porters became a thing that the stout be, kind of transformed from meaning a strong beer to being a dark beer. And originally, stouts were stout is has been cut down. It used to be called a stout porter, and then at some point the styles sort of deconverged. Or diverged, I guess is the proper word. And stout became its own style, and porter became its own style. So it's as everyone knows, one of my favorites, especially the barrel aged stuff. That's my stuff. I like the heavy hitting beers, the double digit ABVs. you know if a stout is less than 10%, I consider it a session stout. My wife and I have conversations that there's no such thing as a session stout, but I beg to differ. you know yeah so There's many different styles of stout. There's the American stout, there's the Irish dry stout, there's oatmeal stout, there's milk stout. There's pastry stouts. There's any number of renditions of the style. Um, it's a great style to brew if you're starting out as a brewer, because you can hide a lot of mistakes in a stout, because of the heavy chocolate kind of coffee flavors will hide a lot of missteps, especially if you use the wrong hops, or your yeast didn't quite go the way you wanted. The grain profile is really forgiving about the flavors that you have, and what it'll allow you to hide.
I see. Now I'm
Um,
taking notes because I want to start brewing, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. But that's good to know.
yeah, stouts. Another one, even though it's a hard style to master. Another one that's good at hiding things is New England IPA, just because there's so many fruit flavors going on in there. If you make a mistake, you can say, no, I meant to do
Yeah.
that. A stout should have, if you're just talking about it, a baseline American style stout, not like a Guinness. Guinness is an Irish dry stout, so it's going to have a different flavor profile. But an American stout is going to be um, somewhat roasty. It's going to have chocolate, a heavy chocolate profile. You might get, depending on how the grain bill goes, you might have coffee forward flavors, or they just might be in the background. I prefer the ones where the roasty coffee flavor is more in the background of it, with the chocolate and the sweetness being up front. I have a kind of a sweet tooth. You'd never know it from my chiseled physique and godlike stature that I like food and beer. But yeah, I like the sweeter stuff. I have a sweet tooth, so the malt heavy beers are my favorite because they always tend to be a little sweeter. Um, you know, I don't know. It's a dark ale. The darker the better for a stout. I mean, if you can see through it, it's not really a stout. It should be pretty much opaque. If it gets to the point to where you can see through it, I wouldn't consider it a stout anymore. It'd be something else. But they have a noticeable aroma. You should, when you're drinking a stout, you should, as it comes up to your face, you should smell, the aroma of the grains, and you should smell chocolate, and you might smell coffee and things like that. And the same with the flavor. It's going to be a bolder flavor. You won't have like a mild flavor in a stout because of the grain bill that it's got. It's going to have a whole big punch of flavor. Um, I today am going to be drinking an imperial stout from one of my favorite breweries. This is Irish Nobility. It's an imperial stout from Wildcard Brewing in Trenton, Ontario. I'm good friends with the owners of the brewery, and anytime I'm up that area, I always stop in. The last time I was there, I bought their entire inventory of a barrel aged quad that they had because it was fantastic. And I think I bought 12 of these, and this is my last one, so I'm using it for this show. And I bought 12 of their barrel aged version of this, which is even better. And this is a great beer in of itself. And yeah, so uh, obviously big beers.
Yeah, no doubt.
So what are you going to be having, Ryan?
So I've got it. I can't show you the bottle because I bought a growler of it, but
Gotcha.
this is a Third Window Brewing, Santa Barbara Brewery, microbrew. This is their Walkabout Stout. So you can find Third
Nice.
Window. I can send you the link if you like. I actually have two, so I can show you the other, which is the barrel aged variety of that.
Very
Focus is
nice.
probably not going to work, but this is a bourbon barrel aged. I haven't had the barrel aged one yet. Since I bought the growler, I tasted this before the show,
Cheating.
but yeah, a little bit. Well, I had to try it. It's great. I've loved Third Window Brewing for quite some time. They've been around for years now. I should know their history better than I do because I don't know precisely how long they've been around. They've been around as long as I can remember, even back when I was working at Red Scale, which is effectively just across the street from them.
Well,
So
it's not required that you know the history of your favorite brewery. You just have to know where your favorite brewery is.
That's right.
Awesome. So yeah, I just poured this one out, and I mean, as you can see, it is black as tar. It's got a nice khaki colored head on it, and this thing is just packed with aroma. I mean, it's got a nice chocolate and coffee aroma to it. You would never not be able to tell that it's a stout. Even if you didn't see the head on it, you'd look at it and you'd be like, "What the hell is that? Motor oil in your glass?"
Right. Yeah, that's mine because the growler didn't quite give me the head that I would have hoped for.
Oh, that's all right. I mean, that's what happens with growlers. They always lose a little bit of the carbonation out of it and everything. So,
Yeah.
what's the
Yeah,
flavor
this
for
one's
what is the flavor profile on that? Man,
yeah, so this one is they describe it as a chocolate and orange stout.
okay,
So those are the ingredients they've got in there. But it's real citrusy, like on the nose, very very citrusy. You kind of get like that punch of almost kind of the sour notes from the citrus, um, and then it's a little bit tamer and chocolatey and like coffee and kind of sweet on the
nice,
finish.
nice. Yeah, this was an imperial stout through and through. So it's got that sweet up front, and then you start getting that bitter towards the middle, and you get the bitter on the end because to combat the sweetness, they tend to bitter imperial stouts a little more. I don't remember what this one comes in at. 9.6%. So, it's technically less than a double digit. So I guess it's still a session stout.
Yeah, mine's only 9. Mine's a little bit behind yours.
Uh-huh.
So.
For people who are interested, the proper glassware for any style stout is actually the Nonic pint that I have mine in. So that's the pub pint that you have that has the bulge on the glass. A lot of people think that bulge is to help keep you from dropping it, and while that does do that, it's actually designed so that if the glass falls over, the rim doesn't get chipped. That's why it has the bulge.
Okay.
Uh,
See, I was expecting some description that had to do with like the where the aromatics came out of it or something, because there's lots of glasses that are designed for
there
that reason.
there are, but this one is designed for longevity of the glass.
Perfect.
uh, the typical serving temperature in metric units would be anywhere from 12 to 13 and a half degrees is typical for a stout. That's 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit for those of you who are not metric aware. um, stouts go well with believe it or not, stouts go well with sharp cheddar cheese. If you haven't ever tried that as a pairing, give that a try. Grilled meats like grilled lamb and steak. Stouts go well with those.
Absolutely.
Nice burger. For desserts, it'll if you're looking for something that's complimentary, try it with tiramisu or like a black forest cake or a coffee cake even. Um, you know, it's a very diversified style. You can have it with a lot of things. A lot of people think that stouts are like a cold weather beer. I don't agree with that. For me, stouts are a year round beer. I will sit out on the back porch when it's 30 degrees Celsius, which is like 80 or so degrees Fahrenheit, with a nice imperial stout. And everyone else thinks I'm crazy. They're
Absolutely.
out there
Yeah.
drinking their light beers and their radlers, and I've got this oil can of beer here, and yeah. So I don't know. Though if you're one of those people that thinks you should only drink it in the cold weather, well, hey, more power to you. That just means I can have stouts more in the summer because you won't be drinking them.
That's right. Yeah. No, I'm with you. Like year round, like it's one of those things. When I'm traveling, I always look for that on tap or on the beer menu. And surprisingly, a lot of times you don't find it. I see people bars going much more heavily on like the IPAs or the lagers or things like that.
Yeah,
And then very occasionally,
yeah, you're not
there's the
wrong.
stout on the menu.
And,
Yeah.
I'm lucky where I live. There's within a half hour of me, there's probably half a dozen craft breweries, and within an hour of me, it's probably like I don't know, it's probably like 3 or 4 dozen. Um, and there's at least three that I know of that always have a stout available year round, which is great because I love my stouts. I mean, who am I kidding? I love beer. Um, but stouts are one of my favorite styles. Barley wine is another one of my all time favorites. I go back and forth as to which one is my absolute favorite because they're both great styles. For people who aren't familiar, a barley wine is another very strong beer. Uh, you can think of it basically as an old school English IPA with a much heavier grain bill, so it's got a lot more sweetness to it and a lot more alcohol. That's the easiest and quickest explanation without going into the history of barley wines and things like that. Um, so for stouts, the color should be black. No variation on that. Not brown, not gray, not yellow. It's black. Clarity should be. I mean, I suppose if you were to pour it into a tall enough glass where it was thin enough, you could probably see through it. It'd be clear. It shouldn't be hazy or anything like that. Carbonation should visually anyway. There should be some bubbles coming off of it, but it shouldn't be like super carbonated like you see like with a lot of like your macro beers like your Bud and your Miller and stuff where they have tons of bubbles coming off of them. The
The
alcohol,
champagne of beers.
yeah, the champagne of beers. Alcohol, aroma and flavor. The alcohol should be. You should know that it's a beer. I mean, you'll know there's some alcohol, and depending if you're going into the imperial versus a non-imperial style, um, the higher the ABV, the more of the alcohol taste and aroma that you're going to get. Um, Hop aromas, that all depends again on the style. If you're going for a non-imperial, it'll be very mild to non-existent hop aromas. As you get into the imperials, you might get some of the hop aromas depending on what style of hops they used. Um, but they're typically the hops are only used for the bittering. They're not really used for the flavor in a stout. Um, you should have medium malt sweetness for a standard stout. It'll be higher for an imperial stout, and even higher on a barrel aged stout because it gets kind of concentrated. You should have caramel and chocolate and roasted coffee. I don't know. You might get a little bit of depending on the style, you might get like a almost like an earthy flavor to it. It might, if it's a barrel aged stout, you're going to get flavors of wood and possibly leather and things like that. And it's funny because you talk to people who don't drink beer, and you're like, "What do you mean you're going to get the flavor of leather?" It's like, well,
Right.
it's hard to explain, but it's actually something that you want in like a barrel aged beer because it means it's pulling the flavors out of the barrel. You
Right.
get that I love bourbon barrel aged stouts because they pull out the flavors of the bourbon, and then they pull out vanilla from the oak that it's aged in, and you get a little bit of smoothness out of it because it's sat and aged for a while, and the char inside the barrels helps aid with the smoothness of the beer and things like that. It's great. You shouldn't have any real fruit flavors unless you're drinking one like yours. That's a specialty stout that's orange and chocolate. But a standard stout wouldn't really have a whole lot of the fruity esters or anything. As far as the body goes, it should be fairly mouth coating, so it hangs around after you drink it. Actual carbonation should be low to medium, so you shouldn't have a whole lot of belching going on if you're drinking stouts. If you do, it's overcarbonated. You should have a medium to long finish on it. And what that means is after you take a drink, it hangs around in your mouth for a little bit. You're like, yeah, I was just drinking a stout. Unlike, like your Pilsners and your crisp lagers where you drink it and it's gone. Um,
Yeah.
you know, typical hops that are used depending on the brewery. You get a lot of Centennial, maybe some Horizon. I tend to use Pearl in mine, or Tettinger, or I can never pronounce that one, but I always just say Tettinger and people know what the hell I mean. Or I'll use Saz is another one of my favorites. That gives a little bit of a peppery finish on it. That uses pale malt and black roasted malt and chocolate malt, and I use some carafoam in mine and things like that. And it uses an ale yeast, so it's not a lager, it's an ale, which means it's fermented at a little bit warmer temperatures. Doesn't take as long as a lager. Lagers tend to take weeks to finish fermenting, and depending on the yeast that you're using, like I did one with Kvik or Kvike, I don't know how they pronounce that style of yeast, but it did a 10.5% imperial in 3 days, and it was done fermenting. So, you know, typically my stouts take 2 to 3 weeks to ferment, but that one was a fun experiment, and things like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about like the flavors that you get out of it, like leather and things like that, and it's like what people don't realize, I think, a lot of times is it's not really a flavor, right? It's like it's the flavor that you get when you smell leather, right?
Yeah.
Because so much of flavor is from what something smells like and from where what you get through the
Yeah,
nose. So
yeah. Well, what is it? I think it's supposed to be like what 90% of flavor comes from aroma. So
right.
yeah, and if it smells kind of like leathery, well, you're gonna go, yeah, it's kind of leathery, and like I said,
Right.
I
Yeah.
like I like some of them when one of my favorites that they used to do, one of the breweries up here, they stopped doing it as of last year, I think it was. It's called Whiny Bastard. It was an imperial stout aged in Pinot Noir barrels, and so,
Oh wow.
so you got the vanilla and that oaky earthiness and a little bit of leather in there, but then you also got the wine flavors in it, and it was
Right.
great. But apparently it didn't sell well enough anymore, so they stopped making it. But I love that where you get all those minglings of those flavors. I had one. I don't remember the brewery. It was earlier this year. I had one that they aged it for 12 months in bourbon barrels, and then aged it for 6 months after that in Pinot Noir barrels, and it was absolutely
Oh
fantastic.
wow.
So you had this mingling of all
Yeah.
these flavors, and it was just super complex and layered. It was great.
Yeah, no, I've been on a kick of like bourbon barrel aged stuff.
Yep.
So this is not a wine show, and I'm gonna shut up about wine. But my wife and I do drink a lot of wine, and there's a wine, several actually, but one in particular that is aged in bourbon barrels, and there's just something about it. Like it's that smoothness that you get from being aged in the wood. That those little hints of vanilla and those sorts of things that you kind of get out of a red blend wine anyway, but it's really enhanced with the bourbon barrels, and it's got that same sort of like smoothness of a really mellow bourbon.
Hmm. Awesome. Which winery puts that out? Do you know?
It's Menage a Trois. Yes.
So tell me a little bit about I forgot I have my camera on auto tracking mode, so when I'm moving my glass around, it's like,
That's what's going on. Okay.
yeah, Mike, I've got a really cool little camera. It's made by a company called ObsBot. It's the ObsBot 4K Tiny, but it's an AI powered camera, even though it's not really AI, it's machine learning style camera. And I just updated the firmware on it, and by default it turns on the motion tracking after you do the firmware update. So when I move,
Yeah, look at that.
it follows me around, but it has a problem every time I like put a glass up in front of my face. It's like, oh shit, how do I find his face?
Where'd he go?
Where'd he
Yeah.
go? Yeah, I forgot to turn it off. I had it turned on for another thing where I was kind of moving around, and then I forgot to turn it off, and it leaves it on. But yeah, so if my camera moves around a little bit, it's because I was dumb and I didn't. Let's see if I can remember. I think if I do this, there we go. It flashed at me. So there.
You reset
Ah,
it. Okay, there
ah.
you go.
Now I can move around and it won't give people motion sickness.
Oh, lovely. Isn't technology grand?
It
Huh?
is. Well, I was my little sound studio here is a repurposed closet in our basement, and I was looking for a camera that could be fairly close to me because I don't know, it's probably 4 feet from my face. So I need something
Sure.
that had a fairly wide range of view, but it needed it to be small because I didn't want like a big honking camera taking up a big chunk of my space. So
For
this
sure.
was this was the best bang for my buck, and it's been a good little camera. It's just I got to remember, if I accidentally turn on the tracking, to turn it back off and things like
Right.
that.
Yeah, I have recently gone on a little like obsessive compulsive journey with my video setup because I work in technology, which I kind of said at the top, and so I'm in meetings pretty regularly, and they're all Zoom meetings and things like that. I actually work for a company that is all remote, which is super cool. Um, and what I realized, I was using a fairly good webcam, USB webcam, and yeah, I had it up on top of my monitor like it's supposed to be and all that good stuff. But it had a super wide angle field of view on it, and I've got it pretty far away, like more than an arm's length away. And I've kind of sat back because I've got a big desk. And what I realize is that it can't focus that far away. It's intent because of the wide angle of view and everything else. It's intended to be like right up in your face, basically.
Right.
And so I I'm using OBS, right, to kind of tweak my video and do all that sort of stuff. And I zoomed in, and that highlighted the fact that it's out of focus. It was kind of okay when it was out in the big wide field of view, but now I zoomed in and it's clearly blurry. So what I'm actually using right now is my cell phone, and Droid Cam, to be able to basically get the video off of it.
Yep.
So it's a little sharper. It's in focus because it actually can adjust the focus.
Yeah, no, before I got an actual camera, I used to use Droid Cam. I had a Pixel 3 XL that I wasn't using anymore, and I just mounted it in a little tripod thing, and
Yep.
had it connected via USB to my computer, and it works great. I actually used it. I used to use it when we were playing D&D. I would mount it so it faced down on my desk, and when I rolled my dice, because we were doing everything remotely, you could actually see my dice rolls.
There you go. I
Before
love it.
Yeah, before we switched over to a full VTT where all the dice are now digital dice, so we don't even have to roll real dice if you don't want to.
Oh, well, it's okay, but like real random numbers digitally, come on.
Yeah, I know, but but you know what? It's nice to not have to to not have to have another camera face down on things
Yeah, for sure.
for people to see your dice rolls and things like that. But yeah, I I retired from tech and got drugged back into it. So I am too working in tech again. You know, I rose all the way to the top. I became a CIO of a medical company in the States, and then I moved to Canada, and I was retired. And my wife's like, yeah, you can't be retired if I'm not retired, and I'm not ready to be retired yet. So you got to go find yourself a job. And I tried to find a part-time IT job, and nobody wants to hire anybody part-time for
Yeah.
IT. They want everything full-time. So here I am working full-time, but I'm working in a nice job where I have like next to nothing for responsibility. So at the end of the day, when I leave the office, I leave the office. It's not like the old days
Yeah,
where I
that's
left the
nice.
office and it followed me.
Yeah. You're not on pager duty.
No, that is one thing I will never do again. I will never be on call. I mean, my boss and the company I work for now have strict orders that unless the company is basically burning to the ground and they need all hands on deck, don't call me after hours. And
Yeah.
to be fair, here in Ontario, it's the law, work life balance law. That your employer cannot require you to do things after your shift is done. So it's nice.
Nice.
Yeah, it is nice.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I've kind of gone from like the IT software and sales, which is kind of when we met. That was sort of what I was doing is selling IT software more or
Right.
less. And I'm like a full on software engineer now, which is it's cool in a lot of ways. It's entirely up to me whether or not I leave work at work, which is a challenge that I have
Yeah.
of my own volition. But
Well, especially when work is where you live.
yeah, for
So
sure.
it's real
Yeah,
easy. It's real easy to slide into that. Oh, I'm just going to do this for a couple minutes. I got a few minutes before we got to do stuff, and then before you know it, you've been working for another 6 hours. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. The fortunately the family keeps me honest for the most part, but it's a challenge to keep those things separated for sure.
Yep. Yep. No, I totally get it. I mean, I was that way for years. It wasn't until right before I moved up here that I was like, yeah, no, don't call me after hours. Unless it's a dire emergency, I don't care. It'll hold till the next day. You know, so, and that's the way I feel now. And like when I was interviewing for jobs and stuff up here, that was one of the things I said. It's like I don't want to be on call. If this job requires any on call, I don't want it. Um,
Yeah.
I just started at a new company a couple months ago, but the previous company, one of the owners came up and he's like, "We're thinking about putting IT on call." And I said, "Well, if you do that, I will quit the moment you announce it." And
Okay.
then they decided they didn't want IT on call because there's
Hmm.
yeah, for honestly, for what I did, I mean, IT at this company literally only supported internal customers. They were a telecom. They only supported internal customers. So they had a whole other branch of tech people who did all the customer facing stuff. There was
Yep.
never an emergency that required IT because they had a dedicated networking team that handled all the infrastructure. They had a dedicated security team that handled all that. We literally were the guys that handled Windows servers, and
Right.
Windows desktops. There's never a time in that business where, oh my God, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and my laptop won't fire up. Then go to fucking bed.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I can't get my email.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be there in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I work on stuff that like real customers use, but it's very, DevRel sort of stuff, DevOps, where the stuff that we build, we also build the software that automates deploying it and monitoring it and keeping it up. So I fortunately, in the role that I'm in, I'm never in an on call rotation. But even for people who are in my organization, it's during business hours for them, right? Like it's not at night and other things because we've got follow the sun, we've got
Right.
people everywhere anyway, um, and you're supporting something you built, right? So it's not like, okay, it's broken now and I've got to figure out how Microsoft Teams works or call a vendor or something like that. It's no, I wrote some software and I shouldn't have released it on a Friday, and now I've got to fix it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Pro tip here, guys: never release software on a Friday.
No, that's a big no no. Coincidentally, like I agree with that, and I'm not advocating that you do, but where I'm at and the sort of work that I'm doing, it's actually kind of okay because usually the changes are really really small and easily reverted. That's the benefit of like the really good automation tool chain and
Right.
the monitoring tools that we have in place. So it's still not the kind of fire drill that you want, but it's pretty manageable where I'm at right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I know this, but for the people listening, you have 4 children.
Yes.
What the hell was going through your mind when you and the missus decided that you wanted to have four of
uh,
them, not one, not two, but four?
yeah. Not one, not two, but four. So like she would love to have more. I agreed to two when we got married. And also, so for those that are listening, I think you know this. Like my wife and I were married very young. I
Mhm.
was 21 years old; she was 20. Um, and so one of the things that I insisted upon was that we have some time as just us. And she wasn't a big fan of that. She comes from, a Latin background where if you're not like, 18, married and pregnant, then you're an old lady, right? And so that's sort of the expectation. Um, I made her wait until she was 25 years old. So I said 5 years exactly. And like we had my first son like almost to the day 5 years after. And I meant that like 5 years we would start, but it worked out the way it worked out.
Well,
Yeah.
what's the Jurassic Park saying? Life finds a way.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Yeah, there's a whole long story that goes along with that. My wife is diagnosed with multiple sclerosis as well, and it's something that we found out kind of right in the process of that. And it turns out that being pregnant is a great treatment, effectively, for multiple sclerosis. So that kind of feeds into like why four, because honestly, it's kind of the best way to treat her condition. I mean, it's not the only reason that we did that, but it kind of worked out that way. So,
Awesome,
um,
awesome. Well, I'm also friends with your wife on Twitter, and
yeah,
I make comments now and then. And I think we've all been friends long enough, even if it's in the virtual world, that she knows pretty much to take everything I say with a grain of salt, or to understand that if it's not sarcasm, it's a joke.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, your wife is great. I often make comments about, like, I don't know how she puts up with you and things like that, because you know
No, I don't know either.
I do enjoy what her post where it's like, mom of four stuff, and I'm just like shaking my head and like, man, it was bad enough with one. I can't imagine three times that.
Yeah.
Three more added on, four times the children. I just,
Yeah.
you know but like you, when I first got married, the first time I got married, I was young as well. I was 21, and unlike you, my daughter was born before we were married. So, but yeah, I understand the appeal of taking some time and not having kids. 'Cause I'm at the point, where, like, my daughter was moved out of the house by the time I was 40, so I
Yeah.
got the time at the end. So I've been child free for more than, going on 2 decades now. So
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, so it's been nice. There are challenges to having your kids early and getting married early, but there are also benefits. I, unlike you, am done early. So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're kind of getting into the long tail. My eldest is 14 now, and so my my second son, my sister and I were really close in age. We were like 2 years apart, and so in my mind, that was what you did, and that was a good thing, right? Because we were close enough that we were good friends, even though we were a boy and a girl. Like, we
right.
got along really well, and so in my head, like, we needed to have another quickly, like within 2 years, and so my second oldest son is almost exactly 2 years apart. And then we've got my third son, who's 8 years old, and then baby girl who's three now.
Wow, it's three
And
years.
yeah,
You know,
yeah, but it's amazing though, because girls are just you had a girl, so maybe you can attest to this. Like, girls are just different. Like, she's 3 years old, and she's more reasonable than any of her brothers. um, you can actually talk to her and like explain something and like calm her down and walk through stuff. She seems like infinitely more rational, which is bizarre.
yeah, that was not the case for me and my
Okay,
daughter.
yeah,
So you got lucky.
I guess, yeah. Um, but yeah, my boys are just, so my understanding, and I've heard this from people who've had both, that like boys are hard when they're young because they're just like energy and chaos and getting into stuff they shouldn't be getting into, um, and then they get easier when they get older, which I'm seeing that with my 14-year-old son. And then girls are kind of the other way around. They're you know easier when they're little, like when she's little, and then when they become young women and teenagers, then it becomes another story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can see that. I mean, my daughter was my daughter suffered from the fact that she was precocious.
Mm.
Both her and both my ex-wife and myself were both, not to toot my own horn, we're both fairly intelligent people. Um, we were both fairly gifted people in terms of our abilities, and our daughter inherited that from both of us, and then also inherited the attitude from both of us. And it wasn't like some from me and some from my ex-wife. No, it was the combined total put into this
Yeah.
package. So yeah, so she was a bit of a handful because she was usually a little too smart for her own good, and much like me, was a little too stubborn for her own good.
So take all of that, and add ADHD and some behavioral problems, and that's my second oldest son. We love him, but he is a tremendous challenge. And again, not to toot my own horn, but both my wife and I are not stupid people. And fairly confident that he's probably smarter than we are. Don't let him hear me say
Yeah.
that.
He's not listening,
And
is he?
then, yeah, he might be. But man, I tell you, like, and that's the thing is, you can probably attest to this as well. Like, parenting is like such a personal journey, like an inward journey, right? Like, because you're parenting and like trying to train this person that's like a reflection of you. So all the things about yourself that you're not maybe a big fan of, and you see that reflected in this person, it's a challenge.
Yeah, it is. No, it really is. You know, you want to try and prep them for everything, and try to save them from the same pitfalls that you had, but it's not always possible, and it's not always the best thing to do. I mean, sometimes you need to let
Right.
them stumble and fall. So that's the joy of parenthood.
Oh yes.
Sounds like you just cracked your second beer.
Yeah, well, I can't remember if we talked about it before the intro or not, but I've got the
But
barrel
yeah,
age
yeah, you said
version
you
of
had the
the
barrel
same
aged
beer.
version,
Yeah.
yep,
So,
of
and
that same
actually,
beer.
I think I can adjust my focus so you can read the label a little bit better.
Yeah,
But and it's mirrored image. So this is the same beer, but they barrel age it, and they don't actually say for how long. I'm guessing it's got to be for a couple 2-3 months at least.
yeah.
Um, and this one also, I guess this just doesn't have a lot of carbonation in it
Barrel
whatsoever. So
aged beers won't have a lot of carbonation. I mean, they unless they recarb it or force carb it afterwards. Barrel aged beers tend to be a lot less carbonated, and that's one of the reasons I really like them. Is because I'm not a huge fan of heavy carbonation on beers.
sure,
I
yeah,
love a good cask aged beer because it's low carb. You know, it's just enough to give it a little bit of sparkle, but not enough to make you sit there going. Bro, bro.
right, yeah, yeah. This one, the that citrusy nose is a lot more mellow.
Yeah,
I'm getting a lot more of the chocolate on the nose.
nice.
Wow. Okay, so man, that's a lot more complex, actually.
And it should be if it's barrel aged. I mean, if the original was a multifaceted beer with chocolate and orange and probably roasty coffee hints and things like
Yeah,
that, you throw in a bourbon barrel where you've got bourbon, which has its own set of flavors, and then you get a little bit of vanilla and the wood and the tannins from that. And yeah, it's gonna be a complex beast. That's the thing I really like about barrel aged beers too, is there are always
yeah.
so many layers, so many facets of flavor and things like that. It's great.
Yeah, I mean it's got some of like the like the caramel and some of those like darker sweet flavors to it.
Yeah. A lot of the time,
Yeah,
barrel aged beers will have like you'll get notes of like dark fruits, like fig and dates and things like that. Depending, again, it depends on the barrel type and the alcohol type that was originally in the barrel. But yeah, I love when you get those dark flavors that come into the beer. It just gives it so much more depth.
yeah, yeah. And the before the barrel aging, they have vanilla in the beer normally, but you can taste it a lot more in the barrel aged.
Yeah, it probably gets. I mean, it'll pull some from the barrel, but it probably just gets concentrated because barrel aging
Right,
you lose a lot of liquid out of it. So
right.
it gets a little everything gets a little more concentrated. The booze gets a little more concentrated. The chocolate flavors, the coffee flavors,
Yeah,
but on top of that, it also gets smoothed out and mellowed out, which is nice.
yeah.
You'll lose a lot of harshness if a beer is really harsh and you barrel age it. It should be it should make it a lot smoother than the original.
Yeah. Well, so like the without the barrel aging, the like I said, the it's real kind of citrusy on the nose, but it's kind of almost lemon citrusy. This on the nose, you smell orange, like it smells sweet orange,
Nice.
and then you get that chocolate in there as well. So it's fun comparing the two. I hadn't obviously tried the barrel aged one yet, but
Yeah, no, that and so that's one of the things that's really amazing about beer, and I've said this several times on several of my episodes. You can take basically 4 basic ingredients, and you can come up with so many different flavor profiles. And then you throw in things like, oh, we're going to throw it in this barrel and let it sit for a few months, and you're going to get different flavors out of it, or you'll get modified versions of the same flavors. And it's just amazing. It's brewing is as much an art as it is a science. And don't get me wrong, the big macro beers, that's all science. It's not so much art anymore. But for craft brewers who want to play around with recipes, and like I'm one of these people, I love just experimenting with beers when I'm brewing them, and trying out different hops and trying out different yeasts, and trying mucking around with grain bills, pushing the limits as far as they can to still stay within the style guides and things like that. But it's great. You take 4 basic ingredients and you can make a plethora of different flavors, and it's great. If you can't find a style of beer that you like, um, with all the combinations that are out there, then you just need to find a different type of alcohol.
Right.
Because
So,
there's so
so
many
let's see.
flavors.
Those four are barley, hops, yeast, and water.
Yeah, that's it.
All
Yeah,
right.
that's the 4 basic ingredients. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, and malted barley, and obviously you're going to have different types of beer. Like if you're doing gluten free, you're going to have rice, or sorghum or things like that. But yeah, it's a malt of some sort, a yeast, a hop, and water. Those are your 4 basic ingredients. You can come up with so many different styles and flavors based on the different varieties of all those things.
Right.
So
Yeah, well, I mentioned it. I do want to get into brewing. Like the prerequisite here is the space in my garage that the project car is taking up. I need to get the project car done, which is an oxymoron. A project car is never done, but I need to get it running and out of the garage so that I've got space to start brewing. We've talked about this a little bit on Twitter before,
yep.
but I think I need to just get over the idea that I need a lot of space for it and actually just like brew something.
Yeah, I mean, you really don't need a ton of space. If you start off with like one of the all-in-one units, like a Robo Brew or something like that, you need, I don't know, if you had something, well, about the size of my closet here, where it's like, 10 feet deep and like 4 or 5 feet wide, that's more than enough space for the brew system. And then, your carboys and whatever. Or if you're like me and you just go full bore and buy actual stainless steel fermenters and the whole bit, you don't need a ton of space to start. I didn't have a ton of space to start. And now I've got a ton of space. I've got a huge garage, and I've got a new brewing system coming, and I've got 4 fermenters and a ton of kegs and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, you don't need a whole lot to get started, and it's not that expensive to get started. It's a few $100 for a Robo Brew for like the 5 gallon version. And if you go with all plastic stuff, the cheaper stuff, you can get your fermenters and everything for another couple $100. You're looking like maybe $500-600 to get started, and you don't need a ton of space. So it's a really accessible hobby. Just
Yeah.
just know that it's a slippery slope hobby, because once you get started, you're like, well, now I need this, and now I need this,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and before you know it, you're buying a 1 barrel skid mounted system to put in your garage, and you've got half barrel fermenters and a commercial cooler with taps, and oh wait, that's just me.
yeah. Well, I've seen some of the recent photos on Twitter of some of the stuff you got coming. That's some pretty impressive stuff. You're like becoming your own microbrewery on your own, man.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things my wife and I discussed, opening a brewery, and then we got looking at all the stuff, and we decided that we'd much rather just have a kick-ass home brewery and still be able to take
Yeah,
vacations and go away. Because if we
right.
opened a brewery, basically I'd be working full time and never be able to take a vacation for the first few years till things got going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, my wife, the class that she went through when she introduced me to wine was a hotel and restaurant management, and becoming a chef and learning how to be a chef was part of that program. And
Yep.
so, like, and living in Santa Barbara most of my life, like you see the turnover of restaurants there, right? Like it's a huge commitment to open a restaurant and then make it successful. The same would be true, I'm imagining, for a brewery, right?
Yeah,
It's
it
very
is.
similar.
It is very similar. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy the amount of money that's required for this stuff. And here in Ontario, it's crazy the amount of hoops you have to jump through. I was talking with
Right.
my friends at Wildcard Brewing the last time I was up there a couple months ago, and my buddy Nate, who's the owner, he's like, "So whatever happened with you starting a brewery?" And I told him, "Oh, we decided against it." And he's like, "That's probably the best decision you've ever made, Rob."
Yep. Well, and like that's a common one here, because I keep mentioning Santa Barbara. We about 4 years ago we moved north of Santa Barbara. We're in Lompoc now, which is like the coastal edge of the Santa Barbara wine country. So if you kind of follow the San Ynez River inland, you end up in San Ynez and Buellton, and that's Santa Barbara wine country. So the movie Sideways was literally filmed in that area. And so the common like desire that people don't realize the effort that's going into it is like, oh, I'll plant a vineyard, or I'll buy a vineyard, or like I'll plant some grapes in my house and like actually make wine, without any realization of like the amount of effort and money and everything else that goes into it. It's
Yep.
like, for people that aren't doing it commercially and making a profit and doing it with just the right margins, you're throwing money away to like make your own wine.
Yeah. Yep. Well, awesome, man. We have been talking for about 50 minutes here. It's
It goes by quick and easy.
it does. Well, yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of the show. It's supposed to just kind of feel like a couple people hanging out, drinking beer, and talking, which is exactly what we've been doing. Um,
There you
so this is the point of the show where I say, hey, if you enjoyed what you've seen, please click like and subscribe, and maybe click that little bell to be notified when new episodes come out. If you have a question for me, please leave it in the comments. You have a question for Ryan, or you want to know more about what Ryan does, or the company he works for, leave those comments below, and I'll be sure to forward anything on that needs to be forwarded. If you have a suggestion for a beer style, a particular beer, or someone you'd like me to try and get on the show, because Lord knows I'll try and get anybody on the show. Whether or not I can get them is another thing. Please leave those in the comments section below. Other than that, until next time, I'm Rob from the internet. Cheers.